Okay, folks, welcome back to Battle for Azeroth. I wanted to amend the state of video I made for Frost Death Knight. I have reached max level, reached 120. I've done a few different things now. I've unlocked my PvP artifact appearance. I'm going to be switching specs, so while the thoughts are still fresh in my mind, the first thing, to make a minor addition to the last video I made, I did play around with a couple of the talents. I did swap out Gathering Storm for Glacial Advance. While it was fun, a fun ability to use, that's pretty much all I can say. It really gave me no benefit otherwise. Didn't seem to help with my DPS or anything else really. So I swapped back, and I swapped out for my PvP talents. I swapped out Dead of Winter for Death's Chill. This is a bit of a weird ability, because whenever you use Remorseless Winter or Chains of Ice, it's supposed to root the target in place for 4 seconds. What it doesn't tell you is that is that the ability has to be applied twice, or reapplied, I should say. It's not enough to apply the ability once, the ability has to be reapplied for them to be rooted. Because I use the ability and they keep moving, and with a root ability, you're not supposed to move. So it's a bit of a wonky ability, doesn't always seem to work. My thinking was, okay, so if I Chains of Ice one target and then I have Remorseless Winter on, that should root the target with the Chains of Ice. No, doesn't seem to be happening. Then other times I seem to somehow stun an entire group. So I'm not entirely sure what's happening with that. I've been working under the assumption, because when I read it, that's the way I interpreted it, was it had to be reapplied. There's another ability in the game I know I've used at some point that had a very similar effect. And that's kind of what I've been doing. I tend to spam Chains of Ice anyway. If you're a druid, you can shapeshift out of it, you can trinket out of it, what have you. So it's not unheard of to be spamming Chains of Ice. You have reason to be doing that. So when it does work, it's fantastic. I love it. So seems a little more worthwhile than Dead of Winter, and not having the longer cooldown, I'm able to use Remorseless Winter more. So yeah, not too bad. First thing I did when I reached 120 was did some world quests to get a little better gear. That was really all I was interested in as far as world quests, was just getting gear. I did, I think, 5. So I did about all the objectives they have you do to complete a world quest, kill mobs, kill rares, things like that, what have you. And when I first reached max level and went out, I deliberately left all the gear I had because I wanted to see how I did in PvE. And I died quite a few times. Even if it was just accidentally pulling 2 mobs at the same time because they were so close together. That said, when I was able to kill a mob, then Death Strike's proc came into effect, and that seemed to help. I did find myself using Death Strike over Frost Strike a few times just because I was trying to stay alive. And my DPS just really didn't seem like it was doing quite as well. And that's, using Pillar of Frost, I mean, just popping everything to begin with. However, after that was, my item level was about 260. After I got a few pieces of gear, got a little better geared. I'm 290 now. Then it played a little more as you would think. The only thing I noticed as far as stats, and I didn't really notice this in PvP so much, is I think you'd probably want to have at least a minimum of 10% haste if you were going to do PvE, if you were going to do quests and dungeons and whatnot, because it also helps with your rune regeneration. And there were quite a few times where I found myself just not able to use anything. I'd used my runic power, I was waiting for things to come off cooldown. I spent all my runes. And keeping in mind I have everything pretty well focused on regenerating runes for PvP, and it just really wasn't, I wasn't waiting long, but there were times where I really didn't have very much to, I kept like spamming Howling Blast, I think, because of the proc. I think if I'm not mistaken, let me see here. To consume no runes, right. So there were a few times I remember I used the proc for Howling Blast, and then, you know, Obliterate came off cooldown. And now, starting out, you were pretty well fine. You could use Obliterate a couple times, use Death Strike, Howling Blast, what have you. It was just if you accidentally pulled another, or if you were trying to chain pull mobs for whatever reason, chain pulling wasn't too, depending on the mob, it wasn't too bad as long as you were able to use the Death Strike proc when it came available. It didn't keep me at that point when my item level was about 260. It still wasn't enough to keep me completely alive to heal me completely. Once I got my item level to 290 and I did a couple world quests, then it was a little more like you thought. I didn't really have any issues. Obliterate was doing decent damage. I was able to use Frost Strike, things like that. It played a little more as you would think Frost would play. As far as PvP, it was pretty well a matter of course, I am under, quite a bit under geared for PvP right now. It just groups all max level players together, so there were quite a few players that were geared better than me. I didn't do terrible on DPS, certainly didn't do as well as I had been, so it's just pretty much a matter of just getting geared and getting better gear and what have you. Other than that, no real difference there. So there you go, folks. There is my thoughts on Frost Death Knight at 120. Hope you found that helpful, and thank you for watching.